Members of the culinary and bartenders unions are talking about possibly holding a vote to strike later this month.
Contracts for more than 53,000 hospitality workers are up for negotiations this year. Fox 5's Mike Allen joins us now to break down the details of what's at stake here.
Yeah, John, Jacqueline. So according to a statement by both unions, there have been many rounds of negotiations. Still no tentative agreement, though, for a new 5-year contract. That's what they're looking for. They're also looking for better wages, reducing workload and housekeeping quotas, better benefits, and extending recall rights so that workers have more job security. And they also want the right to return to their jobs in the event of another pandemic or economic crisis. Fox 5 talked earlier today with the head of the local culinary workers union. He told us what else the union is looking for. One of the items is a guarantee that able workers will be able to find work.
Companies have come back from the pandemic with less workers, expected to do more work. We're just not going to stand for that. They need to bring these workers back, and there needs to be opportunities for jobs, good jobs for workers in these companies.
So looking forward, the culinary and bartenders unions have scheduled a vote to strike on September 26th. In the meantime, more than 24 resorts and casinos along the Strip and in downtown Las Vegas are negotiating with the union. We reached out to several of those hotels and are waiting to hear back. Back to you.